the number of kidnappings in Gauteng went up by 15.8% between January and March. That's compared to the same period last year. These are figures from the latest Gauteng Crime Stats issued by the Provincial Police Commissioner, Lieutenant-General Tommy Mthombeni today. He says the leading factors for murders in Gauteng are arguments as well as road rage, which have mainly been committed in public areas, and that the residence of the perpetrator or the victim is also a common place for killings in the province. The common use of weapons for murder is also linked to firearms in particular and remains common. For more on this, let's speak to the Police Commissioner in Gauteng, Lieutenant-General Tommy Mthombeni, who's with us here on set. Thank you so much for being on SABC News this evening, Commissioner. So we'll get to the kidnapping, etc. in just a moment, but you were quite pleased, if I can phrase it in that way, that there has been a drop in overall crime levels, down 7.9%. What do you think is behind that?
Greetings to the viewers at home. Really appreciate for this opportunity, and I must just indicate that the issue of crime, there's no way on which one can be pleased, because we still have numbers which are reported, and these numbers were counting the victims of crime. But we have made progress in terms of the trajectory which we have. In terms of the overall 17 community reported crimes, which we had a reduction of 7.9%.
And so you're not pleased, but perhaps encouraged is the better word to describe where we are. But the challenge becomes maintaining that momentum, because the issue here is sometimes you see an improvement and then in the next quarter we move in the other opposite direction.
Yes, you'll know that the numbers are unpredictable. More so, committing crimes, we can't predict as to say from here when you move out there will be a crime, or who is going to be a victim of the crime. Though we know the hotspots, but I must just indicate that with the collaborative effort we're having, we are confident that we will be in a position to soldier and move forward in ensuring that the communities are and they feel safe.
And we were speaking to, I don't know if you were able to hear, before we came to you, we were speaking to community leaders in Tsakane, in Eldorado Park, and when I asked them about this apparent improvement, the drop in crime levels in the province, they were not encouraged, because they say their experience is still very different. How do you as police make sense of that in one quarter you can see stats that say there were fewer crimes committed, but people say they still feel very unsafe, and that does not speak to their lived reality?
Yeah, the community, they have got the right to be concerned. One has to indicate that, as I've indicated, as long as these numbers they get reported or community report crimes, you have to know that behind each and every crime reported, there is a victim. But what is encouraging is this collaborative effort which we have. And this collaborative effort includes the community. I will often say that the government have approved the whole government approach in 2022 in March, of which you're having 6 pillars. Amongst the pillars, one of the critical pillars is the community involvement. Though from one quarters of the community, they can indicate that they don't feel that they have to do that interaction with the community. I would say we'll have to forge this relationship between the community and the law enforcement agency.
So what is the health? How do you assess the health of the relationship between communities in Gauteng and police? Because in Westbury, just 2 days ago, we saw people throwing rocks at police officers. In Eldorado Park, we had an activist who was saying, well, there's a station commander there who's been in place for a significant amount of time, but they're not seeing a difference and they don't feel they're being taken seriously by the police in their communities.
Yeah, I would say what is important is the interaction. The community have to raise their concerns, yes, of course, and their concerns has to be listened. What happened in Westbury is something which we do not encourage. You will know that Westbury and El Dorado Park, there are some of the areas in terms of the gang-related or affected in terms of the gangs. What we have seen in Westbury is the deployment which we have put for anti-gang. And what was happening in that space, the police, they were conducting a stop and search where ultimately they got somebody in possession of the drugs. And then that pelting of the stone emanated from there. But we did not retreat, we moved forward, and up until that particular individual was arrested.
But there are now people in that area who are contradicting your claim, some suggesting that that's not what had really happened. They say police had been mistreating someone else, and that's why the residents then saw it fit to retaliate in what was a violent manner. Is that a lie?
You have to listen on both sides of the story. But the position which I'm indicating from the South African Police Service, we can even produce the record for the person who is arrested, more so. And you have to take note that we have tactically withdrawn from there. If there was interaction with the police, we should have had a loss of life of which the media, you were supposed to be camping in there. If there's a 2 or 3 bodies, of which it has resulted as a result of the police action.
Kidnappings are up 15%. They were up in the period under review. 1,338 were related to hijacking and attempted hijacking. Only 20 were for extortion and 144 for ransom demands. We've been reporting now about women being targeted online by potential murderers, kidnappers, etc. How worried are you as the Provincial Commissioner about the kidnapping trend in Gauteng?
As I made my remarks when we were presenting the crime statistics, I said it's a worrying factor, the statistics relating to the kidnapping. I further reflected the measures which are in place, which is a collaborative effort once more again. The South African Police Service is having anti-kidnapping unit, which is linked to the counterintelligence. We're having the security industry of which we are partnering. Right. I can tell you, as for now, we had 88 suspects. During the period under review, we had 88 suspects arrested, of which it came out of 66 cases. We have rescued 77 victims of kidnapping. I must just indicate that the technology which is used in collaboration with the security industry is really bearing the fruit, because we can be in a position to can make a follow-up. We have made follow-ups even where people there are making transactions from the bank. We got victims as far as out of this province in Free State and so on and so forth.
And who is doing the kidnapping, Commissioner? Just lastly, because we're almost out of time. Because we talk about kidnapping, this week we've been talking about a potential syndicate, etc. But who is kidnapping people? And is it mainly women being kidnapped?
No, it's not really mainly women. In some other categories, which is highly so for the high-profile people, those who are in business, where you'll find that the demand of the ransom is quite high. It runs over millions. In some other instances, you'll find that it's within the transport mode, where the demand is 1,000 or 3,000. And it is not necessarily a specific, I would say, gender. It is across the board.
What is the level of sophistication, though, of the kidnappers? Are these just common criminals taking a chance? Are they syndicates, perhaps with links even beyond our borders? Because people smuggling and trafficking is also a concern.
In some other instances where the amount is at high stake, you know, it runs over millions. It's something which I can call that is really organized. Hence, we have cracked down most of those cases, and some of them that are national. And in some other instances, it's not that sophisticated the way I have explained it on the first instances.
Commissioner, thank you so much. So much we could talk about, but we appreciate you coming in. That's Lieutenant-General Tommy Mthombeni, the Gauteng Police Commissioner, speaking to us.